Introduction: The Bishop's Secret. The phone rang close to midnight, a faint buzz cutting through the quiet hum of Rome. Michael Calloway reached for it instinctively. A journalist's reflex that rarely rested. The voice on the other end was strained, urgent, and low, like someone trying to outrun fear. Michael, it's Ricci, he's dead. The Vatican's saying it was a heart attack, but that's not the whole story. If you want to know what's really going on, get here fast. And be discreet. The line went silent, leaving Michael wide awake and staring into the dark. Bishop Lorenzo Ricci was dead, a heart attack. They were calling it. He had heard the bishop was working on something risky to do with the roots of Catholicism and symbols older than Rome itself. And now he was gone, just like that. As though all his questions and whatever answers he'd been close to had been erased. By the time Michael arrived in Rome the next afternoon, the Vatican statement had circulated through the media as composed and final as a well-rehearsed sermon. Ricci had died of natural causes. They said his death unexpected but not surprising. Still, the whispers around the Vatican told a different story. Ricci's research had led him down a dangerous path that crossed the boundaries of church tradition and tapped into something the church had no intention of sharing. Michael was granted access to Ricci's quarters under the pretense of writing a buffeted profile on the late bishop. But as he entered the room, he felt a slight chill. The small, shadowed space was unnervingly pristine. Its simplicity stark and deliberate. On the polished wood desk lay a single closed Bible, a set of rosary beads, and a candle worn down to the base. The bookshelves were filled with neatly arranged texts on Catholic theology, ancient history, and comparative religions, but there was no sign of Ricci's final work, no trace of the research that had reportedly consumed his last months. Michael's instincts were firing. He knew the room had been carefully staged. He'd seen it before, a forced order that felt unnatural. Whoever had cleaned up here hadn't expected someone like him to look closer. He walked slowly around the room, his eyes scanning the shadows, the undersides of shelves, the nooks and corners easily overlooked by an untrained eye. Near the window, a faint glint caught his attention. He bent down, and his hand brushed a slim, leather-bound notebook wedge behind a loose baseboard. The cover was dusty, and the edges were worn. Michael's pulse quickened as he pulled it free, realizing he was holding what might be Ricci's final thoughts. The pages were filled with hurried, looping handwriting, thoughts jotted down between notes on theology, passages from the Old Testament, and musings on ancient symbols. But midway through, the tone shifted and the handwriting grew larger, almost frenzied. A single phrase stood out: Babylonian symbols, origin of rituals, root of faith. Michael's eyes widened. Ricci suspected some of Catholicism's core symbols might not have originated in Christian tradition, but predated the church by centuries. Further down the page, another line sent a chill down his spine. The symbols are ancient, older than Rome itself. These rituals are not original. They were borrowed, hidden within the sacred. But what happens if this truth is revealed? How many would it shake? Michael flipped through the pages, each line adding to the gravity of Ricci's suspicions. Symbols he had seen at the altar, in the sacred rituals and ceremonies of the Catholic Church, suddenly appeared in a new light. If Ricci's notes were correct, these images and practices weren't unique to Christianity. They were ancient, borrowed from a world that predated Christianity, a world that until now the Vatican had buried under layers of doctrine and reverence. He closed the journal, his thoughts racing. This wasn't just about history. This was about the very foundation of the church. Ricci had been close to exposing the origins of these symbols, tracing the path of sacred rites back to Babylon itself. And now he was dead. Michael took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the journal in his hand. He knew he couldn't do this alone. He needed someone who understood the power of symbols and could help him decode the fragments Ricci had left behind. There was only one person he could trust with this: Sofia Romano, a renowned historian and expert on ancient religions who had spent her career studying symbols just like these. He dialed her number, his fingers moving automatically, and after a few rings, her voice came through, cautious but intrigued. Michael, it's been a while. It has, but I need your expertise. Sofia, he said, keeping his tone steady. I found something in Ricci's room. References to.
There was a pause, a silence thick with implications. Finally, Sofia's voice came back, tense. If Ricci was connecting Catholic symbols to Babylonian ones, he wasn't just researching history. He was challenging the church's core beliefs. You know what that could mean, don't you? Could it be dangerous enough to get him killed? Michael asked, the words coming out heavier than he intended. Her voice was barely a whisper. Yes, if his research threatened the church's image, it would be more than enough reason. Then I need you here, Michael said. We're dealing with something big. Sofia. Something that could reshape everything we know about the church. The silence on the line felt like the calm before a storm finally. Sofia answered, all right. I'll be on the next flight.